Hello, and
Hi.
welcome to the Listen Carefully podcast. We have a really special guest today, and her name is Dr. JJ Kelly, and she is known as the Punk Rock Doc. And I just can't wait to dive into this conversation today. I'm so tickled and excited and all of the things. I peeked at your content and you're amazing.
Thank you. What did you see? Instagram?
Instagram, the reels, the videos, and just to get your style and to get your flavor. And yeah, I really enjoyed how you're just so transparent and really present. And yeah,
Thanks. I appreciate that. It's not the norm for the field. So I catch a lot of shit, but I'm not going to stop because us being ourselves is sort of how the world heals, I think. So
totally. Yeah, it's almost like you have to jump through the hoops to get to where you're going, but you can't forget to be yourself on the way. I feel like that's what magnetizes our clients to us is, we're all saying and believing and teaching and doing similar things, but we all bring our own flavor. And I think that's what does make us special. And how can we expect that of our clients to be them wildly themselves if we're not able to embody that and
word.
to really practice that and feel safe enough to, because with the way all the systems are, usually or typically, or even when we start from our family system, we have to find out what's safe
Right.
and how we fit in, not only to survive, but to like make it somewhere or to get to where we're going if we even know where we want to go. So,
Totally. And avoid punishment from others in many forms throughout the lifespan.
yes, like the ridicule, the shame, the embarrassment, oh my gosh, humiliation is a really big one. Like that's usually the core of it all, really. It's like
I agree. Getting shamed by others. And, we talk a lot about that, particularly with the advanced students, because they've done the emotional intelligence training so many times that it's just at a different level of speak and actually sophisticated defense systems. But we talk about that too. But we talk a lot about the shame and others trying to shame dump, and whether we take it on or what I always call water off a duck's ass. Like, you're untouchable if you can see what's coming and what people are trying to do to you. It has nothing to do with you. It's their problem. And just because someone's shame dumping doesn't mean you got to pick up that bucket for them. Just leave it there.
yeah.
Not mine.
Yeah.
But that's hard to see, particularly in a power dynamics, bosses, teachers, parents, shrinks, the power in that. And I think that, a big problem for me with mental health is the wielding and misuse of that power. Some like vehicle for being right for insecure people who bought a degree. And then going in and taking money from somebody just to go home going, ooh, I was so right about that. Like, what the hell? The doctor worship is so, sexist, white, ableist, elitist, like, forget it. The isms in mental health, puke. I just had to get out. I mean, it took me almost 20 years to figure it out. And I love the work. So it's tough when you love the work to even take a look at what system am I contributing to right now?
Yeah. There's so many layers because it's like, even going through a system, it's like we believe when we get there, then we'll be enough to recommend or guide or advise, and I work with kids, so I get this a lot, right? It's like, what qualifies you to work with my child? You're a stranger to me. How can I trust that you are the right fit or that I'm going to be leaving my kids in good hands, and that is a privilege. That is a huge privilege to have that and to be able to impact and support a really young psyche and a developing nervous system. And
Totally.
I think that's my, issue with the mental health system, is that along with everything that you shared, I believe that sometimes we wait until it's either, not too late, but we wait until the symptomology is off the charts, or we wait.
Till a crisis.
Yes, and we hardly ever take action before. So we never really come from it from a preventative lens. I mean, I have a few clients that are like, we just want continued support because life is going to bring stress. But for the most case, it's like usually people have to reach that breaking point, because that is what usually facilitates and initiates
Yep.
the change or the desire to be so out of the discomfort.
I'm so with you on the preventative medicine thing. I mean, not medicine, because I don't want medical model, but like
Mhm.
get
But like
ahead
soul
of the
medicine.
crisis. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Jesus, I wrote that in my dissertation in like '06. Just
Wow.
treat adolescence like a normal developmental stage that looks like borderline personality, real similar, that pathology versus just the like normal developmental phase. Just give them the DBT during adolescence preventatively. Just teach it in schools. I'm still tooting that horn. That's a hard thing to get into as a, system of one,
Yes.
but
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Well, I want to hear about you, like what brought you to this work. And I really feel the passion because I share that too. And yeah, what really brought you here, and what are your current edges, and what are the things that motivate you and really spark you like on
Oh
the
my
day to day?
So it's, oh my gosh, when I'm asked questions like that, I'm like, my mind goes in like 400 different directions. What was the first one?
I guess just what called you to this work, like how, I mean, it could be on a soul level too, but just what really initiated this path for you?
Dude, we're born to do it. I mean, a family of origin is what pushes us all into it, at least in undergrad. You want to learn, how not to do that, or how not to turn out like that, or whatever. And I think that's cool. And it's, in grad school, it gets so much more refined and cool and interesting. And I do have a problem with people continuing to grad school when they haven't figured their own shit out on the path of going to help other people. But if they're still like, hey, I'm just, I figured I'd go to grad school for psychology and then work with, people. I don't, and they require that you do therapy or whatever, but come on, it's all like in a closed system.
Yeah. Well,
And then get jargon to like sound right, but still be fucked up.
yeah. I remember a lot of people that I went to school with, they were honest out the gate. They said, I'm here for self-development. I'm here to work on my stuff, and I have no intention of becoming a therapist. And I thought that was really bold to devote that time and effort and energy, because there is a lot to get out of the program. And yet, when you finish those 3 years of the degree, it's like, you're still just at the beginning. I remember one of my mentors said that. She was like, this is literally just scratching the surface. Like, yes, the 3 years is like your training ground, but you don't know what you don't know. And there are so many types of people. Yeah. I learned so much just from the people alone, like that grad school could have never taught me, even though I had some amazing facilitators and teachers, and there's just only so far you can go in the classroom.
Oh yeah, for sure. The patterns develop around, I think 5-7 years, you could see the maturity start happening with new shrinks. And I don't, you hope anyway, the ones that are competent, but I think that, just watching patterns in people and behaviors, and plus I think what we don't talk about is the energy, the feeling of people, and how oftentimes people that have the same diagnosis have that feeling to them when they walk in the room. You know, we sort of accept that without analyzing that, like on the street, when there's someone on the street and then you make a big horseshoe around them because you're like, whoa. People have that sensitivity, but we don't really talk about that because it's too woo or whatever, but it's also like completely accepted and not really analyzed, not out loud anyway. But I mean, I remember even in the beginning, just unconsciously being with this one guy who's really sick and really suffering and really scary. And when he would leave the room, I would open the door and go like this with my hands and like kind of laughing as I was doing it, but I was alone, like I wasn't performing for anyone. What made me want to do that? You know, we know what that thing is, but not necessarily how to talk about it.
Yeah, like the energy, like you're
Yes.
speaking to like the frequencies that we omit or permit or like vibe on.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is a frequency, and that's why people have made those comments like, oh, your energy, or oh, I like being in your energy.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm a extroverted introvert where I love being around people, but like sometimes when I'm around people, I'm the observer. Like I'm not contributing, I'm not taking up a lot of space. I'm just taking in and I'm being inspired, and I'm like kind of reading the temperature of the room, and here and there I'll contribute when I feel like it's valuable. But it is interesting how like that also shapes how we draw our boundaries and how we hold a space, right,
Yeah.
of the room. Or it's like even with play therapy with kids, it's like I'm in charge of your safety and well-being, but like you're directing this client-centered experience, so it's like I'm here for like the safety and the time boundaries and like all of that, but within those structures and things like that, you get to freely move. But it's interesting to experience energy that maybe doesn't always have the fluidity within a structure, or that doesn't always have a structure, or maybe
Language.
people experience time differently. Like I think about that with my dog. I'm like, does she know that 1 hour is different than like 4 hours? Or I could be gone for 15 minutes and it could sometimes seem, I don't know, like how do we track time? I feel like with kids too, it's like they can't tell you what they had for breakfast because that was not now,
A year ago. Yeah. What
Yeah.
seems like, yeah, totally. Totally.
Oh my gosh. Can we also talk about how like in Hollywood or in movies, like the way that therapy is portrayed?
Oh my God. Oh, sure we can. Ridiculous. I think about this a lot too. And like, I don't talk to a lot of people about this either because I don't hang out with shrinks because they're not fun. Who parties with shrinks? Plus, I have to lie socially. I don't have to. I often choose to lie socially when people are like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a singer, which is true, actually. But the second you say psychologist, they do one of two things, right? They go, oh, whoa, don't tell her anything. She's analyzing. And it's like, joke's on you. I'm doing that all the time anyway. But like the second one is like, they want to get free therapy, right?
Mhm.
So I just don't even deal with that anymore. But I love this conversation because I'll be sitting with my brother, like watching a movie that has a shrink in it. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, like this is horse shit. It's so embarrassing. I don't really identify with the field and never really have because I'm so different and I really have a lot of disdain for general things in the field. So I'm not a we with it, but it still hits a like, Jesus, who
For
the fuck?
sure.
Don't you consult with shrinks on this at all?
Or is it just actors? Yeah.
Yeah, Good Will Hunting changed things for me in grad school. When I saw that, I was like, oh, thank God, because I was in hiding. I was completely in hiding about how I was interacting with people in the room. And I think a lot of people are in a lot of different ways. And the way they present at like a case presentation, seminar, or meeting is, it's censored.
Mm-hmm.
They're not really talking about how they talk to people. And that's some narcy bullshit too. Like there is a veil that keeps it a mystery, and then it's just called privacy or confidentiality. But it's, some harm is going on behind closed doors that no one's ever gonna get at.
Yeah.
So
And the piece with confidentiality, it's like, who is that protecting?
exactly.
Yeah, that is so real. I'm so glad you made it so real because, oh my gosh, I think sometimes people, and it's different with kids, but it's like, why are you here? Like, are you here because your parents said you had to be here? Like, are you here for the right reasons? Like, what are we doing? What are we really doing? And it's interesting that you mentioned the singer. It's like, yes, you get to be all of you because like I see that on people's faces too. Like, what do you do? I work with kids.
Mm.
And then if there's any further inquiry, I say, well, I'm a therapist, I'm a play therapist. I practice play therapy. And you do see the different levels on their face when they are trying to understand what you're even talking about.
Yep. Yep. What were you gonna say about the movie portrayal thing?
Oh my gosh. Well, I was going to say that I feel like as time's gone on, they've definitely become a little bit better, but
A little more
also,
sophisticated, yeah.
yeah, but it also makes me laugh because I think about like Freaky Friday when Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis switched positions and she has to like be in that. Obviously, the way they portray it, it's like there's very poor boundaries, like the client's calling her cell phone, like she's always available to him, and that's like not really supporting him or actually giving him what he needs.
Yeah.
It was just interesting that like when the daughter played her role, it's like she almost did a better job because she was holding a different kind of standard.
Mm.
She was holding a different kind of standard for this client, and that just goes to show too, like we're all human, we're all human, and we don't get to be on this pedestal because we have this special thing going for us. Even though, like, I believe that as we practice and as we're in our integrity, obviously, like we do become greater in expanding where we get to hold more. Like, for example, right now, my sweet spot is 10 clients. For a while, it was 8, and 8, anything more than 8 felt so overwhelming because if you think of the family system, it's like I'm working with the parents and the children and
Mm.
maybe the step parents and maybe the teachers, and there's a whole team, maybe they have an occupational therapist too. It's like there's a whole team behind this child that like I will never stop advocating for. So it's like now I'm 3 years into practicing and I can do 10. It's not that like my goal is to have 100, but there are people out there that have like 60 clients a week, and I'm thinking to myself, for what I do, like I can't hold that, and that wouldn't be um
Yeah.
ethical for me to do.
Yeah.
So it's always like a balance. Everyone's different, and yeah, it's just you're going to grow and expand at your own rate. But yeah, like with people being in therapy, challenging them to see if they're there for the right reasons. I think you brought up a great point of holding therapists accountable too, because who's holding them accountable to show up for the right reasons as well.
Totally. 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 Oh my God. Yeah. I think that as time has gone on, less and less. Like I remember having like well over 30 in grad school and for years after that. And he's 10 in a day often.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't know, I loved it. So it was like, but I don't have that kind of, I don't know. I just don't do that anymore. And I do, groups, I teach DBT in like 8-week courses now. And, in group settings. So that seems to, it morphs over time. And that's fun too, because they learn from each other. And then like advanced students are mentoring the younger ones, which I think is dope to watch them. Like, I think that's a natural progression too, that you become more whole you use the emotional intelligence to behave according to your own values. You do that enough and you get strengthened in it. Self-confidence goes up, resilience goes up. And then I think a natural inclination to give and teach and be of service comes from that. There's
Totally.
overflow then. You
Totally.
plugged all the holes, but like a lot.
Yeah.
And then giving becomes a natural byproduct of that, no matter what the age.
Mhm.
So cool to watch. Yeah.
It's like they're filling in their own gaps and they're connecting their own dots. And you're in that role of like holding that and facilitating that for them, even though they're finding out answers to questions they probably didn't even know they had just by being with each other
Totally.
and getting to use the experience of each other and the wisdom that that comes with. And I
Mhm.
imagine that takes a level of trust and rapport and all the group dynamics,
Oh yeah. And
like,
a willingness to jump in and stop it with conflict. I think that's something I really can't stand either, is
mhm,
people taking money and not challenging. They'll just nod and co-sign bullshit instead of quote unquote fight with them. Like, I think it's our duty to get in conflict when there's bullshit going on, because their bullshit hurts them. And I I don't know, we have to horn lock at some point. And when I the first time I really get in a horn lock with a kid, or adult too, is usually week 3, because we're talking about willfulness, the kinds of behaviors that we know we engage in that bite us in the ass later, but we do it anyway. That's usually when we have the horn lock, which is so funny to then like be doing something so long that you can predict with decent accuracy when they're going to while out. I think that's so funny. And to keep it a little bit funny and predictable, I think reduces reactivity in general, because I know it's coming. I'm not worried about it. Like, I don't dig it. It still has some discomfort for me to be in conflict with anybody that I'm seeing. I don't like it, yet I'm going to engage in it on behalf of the client who's coming to me to shed all those bullshit stories that come from defenses, and in order to live more truthfully and in alignment. I think we're supposed to fight with them. And there are cultural differences within the field, I think, but in the Bay Area, there's a lot of conflict avoidance in general socially. It's really different than Chicago, or so that sucks. I think you're supposed to be like, no, 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 don't give me that.
mhm.
And what's beautiful, I just had this happen with a kid. I was like, oh, don't give me that shit. And he goes, no, JD, it's not shit because this and this. And he was totally cool. And I was wrong. I was like, oh, thank you for explaining that to me. I was way off. I was thinking that you were talking about this. You're absolutely right. It is not shit. I beg your pardon. And then we talked about what had just happened. And I was like, how cool. Like, were you in that situation? You're like, no, it's not. Like, you didn't get reactive or whatever. That so speaks to the strength of our connection. And I was like, and how did it feel to have an adult be like, oh, I fucked up. That was my mistake. You were right. He's like, oh my God, I didn't even notice that that happened, and that needed to happen. And like, I don't know if it's ever happened, you know, but I remember thinking that as like at like 14 or whatever. No way. Like, that's bullshit, but you can't say it at school or whatever because the power dynamic. But nobody ever was like, oh yeah, sorry, my bad. Never.
Probably
Adults didn't
so
do
healing.
that.
Yeah, probably
Pardon?
it's probably so healing for him to hear that, because then he doesn't have to go around in other areas of his life to try to prove it or try to be like,
Totally. Totally. And you
oh,
know what? It's gaslighting. For adults to do that and like have such a fragile ego that they just like don't ever admit when they're wrong and model how to do that with maintaining dignity for the kid, like to twist it that it's the kid's thing or be like, oh no, I never said that or whatever. That's gaslighting. People say gaslighting all the time, but we don't actually talk about how it happens on the daily. People just think they know what narcissism is and then say gaslighting. No, to like mess with somebody's mind about their reality and what's happening between us, that's psychological abuse, and it's normalized, particularly in the parent child in, you know, the like adult kid dynamic happens in corporate structures as well. Oh my,
yeah.
whatever. There's so much gaslighting in daily life that nobody even understands.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning the conflict, because it's like, how willing are we to like call each other out and know that there's safety and security in the relationship
Yeah.
deeper than just this conflict? Like, this conflict does not have to define,
Right.
like I thought about this when you mentioned the fighting and challenging with your clients. It's like, you do not get to quit. I'm going to hold you to this standard. Obviously, you can quit if you want, but like,
Yeah.
I know you better than that, and you have the capacity to keep going and to keep showing up. So it's like, I'm not letting you quit, but you don't get to like just quit in this relationship. You don't get to just shy away and hide and disappear and disintegrate. And then like later you can come back and pretend like we're good.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
like, you don't get to do that, because I require a higher standard. And like, even just the patterns that we show up with, like a big pattern of mine and that I'm healing from is like, showing up in relationship where people aren't available. There's some level of like safety and trust that I've been programmed with. That's just only because it's been familiar. Do I feel like it's appropriate? But really, I can see past that and be like, no, Jen, you deserve like relationships that are going to like be present for you, be in the moment for you, like show up for you, and I've been journaling a lot about that because I just moved into my new place, and I'm calling in really aligned relationships that like want to support me in those ways. I feel like there are different kinds of relationships that we can get into where it's like some people don't want to see you in person, but it doesn't mean they don't care as much about you. It's like, I feel like we don't ever talk about that or unpack that either, of like the types of relationships that we're in and how perhaps like past relational trauma creates what we attract, or even um, creates what we're putting out into the world, and how we're calling in the people that are teaching us those parts that we get to integrate, and perhaps like the parts of our shadow that we want to uncover and that we want to advance in. And I know for me, every time I pull a card lately, it's all about intimacy in relationship. And I feel like the best way to start is like being intimate with myself, getting to be able to look at myself in the eyes, or just spending the quality time with myself, with my body, with prioritizing my needs and what I feel like doing rather than what I think I should, or spending my time the ways I think I should. It's like, I get to really reel it all back in and call it all back in. And I feel like that's something that, it goes along with boundaries and it goes along with protecting your own energy. But yeah, I never really learned like types of relationships or even just, yeah, I feel like the ways I guess I learned that were, through movies or through, the different kind of levels of relationship that I've had. But it's interesting how like each relational dynamic can be so different, and yet those underlying patterns can be really similar.
Yep. And what about the gender politics involved here? Like, as female bodied people, we've been programmed to stuff our anger, to keep quiet. I don't give a shit. We've come a long way. Yeah, we have. And you know what? Sexism still very much exists. And we don't talk about how it does. Everybody's like, oh, it doesn't anymore. Poor shit. So we are programmed, I believe, to not receive. Give and take. Oh yeah, that's common sense. That's in a relationship. Really? Because the hetero people that I work with, you can see it very easily. Who's giving more, who's taking more. Of course, there are exceptions, and there are also very distinct patterns. And a lot of female bodied people don't even know what they want, what their needs are, how to honor them, how to say no to someone you love, and manage the worry that comes with that, to even identify the shame that comes with self-betrayal every time you don't say no, when you're compliant and saying yes all the time. Oh, there's so much there.
So deep. Oh, wow. Yeah. All of the core wounds are just being poked out. Because
Yeah.
it's like,
And if you were raised by any sort of narcissist or narcissism within a family system, times 100, which, their narcissism is the epidemic that was before COVID that we didn't understand or talk about. We still kind of don't. I think it's so widespread that the majority of people will be able to relate to what I'm saying when I'm like, oh, and if there was any sort of narcissism in your family system, yeah, 90% of people are whatever. Like, so that can chip away at self-assertion within development and add to the problem.
yeah. And just like, it makes me think of how, like the way that personality disorders stem from like just how we continue to, and I'm not trying to like generalize, but just like I'm being serious about them, but about the diagnostics, but just how like in the essence of like a personality disorder, like it just reminds me of like, wow, how did we become so far from who we were meant to be? Or
Mhm.
like, how did we become so far removed from like who we were born on this planet to become? Like, we're born whole and complete. We've arrived, we've already made it.
Yeah.
So how is it that we just take on that stamp of our family system, or the ways that we behave obviously are like the ways that we've been treated. But yeah, I feel like, because this is something I sit with so much, is how do we really implement the seriousness that requires? You have to have a background check to work in a school, and you have to um, have qualifications to teach children. But what are the requirements to bring children into this world? It's
Totally.
more of a spiritual contract, and it's more of like a soul's decision, I believe, that they choose the experiences that they would like to go through in order to shape how they'll come out on the other end and who they'll be able to support in that process. Because I believe that healing is required. And I also believe that, you know, we can still help people even if we're in our healing journey, so long as we're in our integrity doing so.
Sure.
But it's just fascinating to me how, um, again, maybe this comes back to the preventative stuff of like, sometimes we realize things in hindsight. And I guess, what do you think about the balance between like shaping the youth and also like, yeah, like how do we even start? It just feels so big.
Well, I go at it just with the emotional intelligence skills. Like,
Yeah.
I would love to do it preventatively. I think, I used to think high school, it should be taught in every high school as regular curriculum. Over the years, I've adjusted my thinking. I think it's like a middle school thing, if not earlier. I don't know. I think that I like high school. That's where big changes take place. I relate to them. It made sense to me. The whole like developmental phase of adolescence looking like borderline personality disorder. I still think that's logical. However, why don't we get ahead of that? And so I agree with everything you said. I don't work with kids right out of the womb. So by definition, I'm already probably in the crisis place with them, putting it back together. But the way I go at it is, it matches my values,
Yeah.
because agreement with me is not a requirement. So I have the emotional intelligence skills that I am the expert on. You are the expert on you, within reason, particularly as a teenager, but I can't make people do things. We have to work together. You have to tell me what your values are so that I can help you apply the thing that I know, the emotional intelligence skills, the tools to teach to you and tailor to your behaviors, the behaviors you engage in when you're emotionally activated that don't go with your values, and how you can use the tools that I taught you to take that same situation where you're emotionally activated and apply the tools to behave in alignment with your values, regardless of how intense your emotional experience is in the moment. And that's huge, because people of all ages get emotionally activated enough that they give themselves permission to act the asshole. And then they have shame about it if they're not a psychopath. They'll have shame about it. And then what do people do with shame? So uncomfortable, we hide away from it. We pretend it's not there. All our defenses make it like fake go away. But it's still there. And it's because it's hidden, it's pumping up anxiety, the fear about hiding it. So now you have shame and fear on board, which increases your chances of acting out again, of not acting in alignment in a mindful way when you are emotionally activated. You can see, you don't have to be a shrink to see how narcissism can develop, or how just like unhappy people, forget the diagnosis even, unhappy people act in ways that hurts themselves and others. Most of us believe that that is not in alignment with our values, and most people just don't know how to do it a different way. And I've said this a lot, like COVID did teach us that nobody has any emotional intelligence skills. So there's an upside to that. Okay, I better get some. And I'm like, I got them. I've been saying this for 20 years. Here you go. And you're not dependent on me for years, because I'm not a therapist anymore. So, take your 8 weeks. We'll do this for 8 weeks and then go use them. If you want more, you know where to find me. If a crisis comes up, you know where to find me. But you're not dependent on me, or your kid's not dependent on me forever. It is very much in my this whole entrepreneurial business owner thing is so new. It's like, who gives up private practice and starts a company / revolution with COVID happening? Kaboom, you know? But whatever. I mean, it still matches my values to do it.
Right.
But like, I don't want people dependent on me forever. And it's very much my philosophy. If you want to stay, the longer you want to keep up work with me, the cheaper it gets. It gets less and less expensive the more time that you want. Because come on, this isn't supposed to be just for rich people, you know? So the entrepreneur thing is like, I try and go get funding, and I'm trying to do that so that I can work with people that don't have any money for very little. Like I think that's how it's supposed to be, because I don't know, it's supposed to be a basic human right to learn the skills that lead to you liking yourself. That's supposed to, we have that saying at my company's called Unorthodox Inc., DOCS. And the advanced students we call docs, in order to obliterate this doctor worship, privileged higher education thing, because they're more emotionally intelligent than any doctoral level student I ever supervised. Because they're just going to school. They're not doing the work.
Right.
So these young, I mean, I'm talking all the way down to 10.
Wow.
I have a 10-year-old in the advanced level that is more emotionally intelligent than the doctoral level students that I supervised in my career. That is so cool. And I think it should be everywhere. We often express gratitude for how special and unique our community is.
Yeah.
But there's a sadness for me that goes with that, because it's not everywhere and it is so unique. I want it to be everywhere because I think everyone, just by existing, deserves the right to like themselves and experience joy in their lifetime consistently, not in tiny little bursts once a year on a vacation or something. It's supposed to be part of our daily life. Joy, playfulness, the lightness, and I don't know, laughter that goes with liking yourself. And then the generosity that is the natural byproduct. I think that's how the world is supposed to be.
And who would have ever thought that this is the revolution that we're fighting for?
Right. We're fighting for finding the state through healing that you were talking about we're born with. I say, I say little things like, oh, it takes the next 18 years to heal from the first 18 years. Ha ha ha. Like, but yikes, there's truth to that. And I say it to like normalize, geez, this is so hard, like a 19-year-old freshman at college. So many people of that age have a crisis that first year of college. Yeah. And so I say things like that to normalize, hey, it's not just you, dude. Like, you're not super fucked. Like, this is a thing. But how scary is that? That 20 years after the first, what? And why is that okay? Where are the parent training? And I'm asking me this too. I have historically not dealt with parents. I do the kid, I mean, adults too, but like in this specialty, I'm like, nope. I even have it part of the contract, like step off so I can do the job. I'm not going to be reporting back to you because they won't tell me shit then. I've tried it other ways. It doesn't work. Deal with it or don't hire me. And, I recommend highly to parents, read my first book. The cutting book is a parenting manual, whether your kid is self-harming or not. It's a parenting manual. Plus, it introduces them to my presentation, which isn't a flavor everyone likes. Fine.
Mhm.
But let me do my thing. I know what I'm doing. Your kid will get happier. How do I know? Well, you don't. You're rolling the dice here. You're in crisis. I suggest you hire someone. If it isn't me, don't sit on this. It's already at a crisis point. So, I'm as real that way,
Yeah.
but they need help too. I decided I am going to do a once a month call for like a Patreon subscription or something really like a Q&A for parents.
Mm-hmm.
I finally broke down. I've been asked so many times. I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. How am I going to find a way to like this? How can I do it in a boundaried way where it's not draining for me?
Right.
An hour once a month Q&A, and they've read the book so they can they're not going to get butt hurt when I'm like, no, what are you doing?
Yeah. They know what they're coming for.
Right.
They've set aside the intention to
Right.
show up,
Right.
bring themselves.
Yep. So I did decide I'm going to start doing that. So I do think parent training, why is that not like you get pregnant, you take classes, you take Lamaze, but that's for like birth. What about after that? And don't you want to take some classes before the kid is here? Because that first 2 years, people disappear. They are in oh my gosh, the twilight zone of no sleep. And I mean, so I don't know, maybe when they're 3 or something, you start taking, like, that ought to be free.
Well, it's kind of like when they said it takes a village, it really does, but yet we're all in our own individual homes with our own individual intentions and ideas of what we believe. And we've become less of a village, even though we've created our own villages. I don't know if all of the villages are supportive or.
Hell no. And just the way the patriarchal system with our healthcare, new moms are really isolated and really tired and fried. They need help. And nobody talks about it because in this patriarchal system, nobody gives a shit. They pathologize the new mom instead because that's easier than having services available to her for nothing.
I don't even want to call it healthcare. I want to call it like sick management.
You're right. Right.
Because it's not what it sounds like. We're not taking care of our health. We are not taking care of our health. And if this was about healthcare, we would have been taking care of our health a long time ago.
Preventatively, once again, yes. It would be part of the developmental wellness program available to people of all ages.
Can you imagine what we would be doing if we had all of those needs met, aside from the like physical needs of shelter? And we call it basic, but there's more than just basic. I mean, we're more than basic. So it's just
I like to think about who would not benefit from that.
That would be where your answer would be. Yeah. Yep. And I also love what you said about like the 10-year-old being able to have the emotional intelligence. It's like that also shows the other side of things, where it's like developmentally we could be a grown up, like just all of these men right now who are developmentally presenting as like little boys or like children in their behaviors, but yet they're in grown men's bodies.
Yes, totally. That's the book I just wrote this year is in editing, is for straight white young dudes, because I want to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
And it's in the like how to get a woman format, because I'm not going to be like, hey, this is incel prevention. That's not going to sell. That's not flying off the shelves, So I'm like, if you want to have a relationship, a loving partnership, and create that, here are the values that you need. But in my mind, I'm also like, here's how not to be a white supremacist asshole by the time you're 40. And maybe we can get rid of the isms with the people that currently have the power. Like, yeah, it sucks. And I think bitching about it is productive. However, they need help too. And no one wants to help them because of, obvious reasons.
Mhm.
But like, why don't we get the people that are in power? Now, how they got there is not legit. Yes, I agree with all of that. Yet they're in power. So if I believe that happy people act right, so why don't we get the people that have the unbalanced amount of power happy so that the imbalance of power goes away? It's not necessary anymore. Top down. Happy people aren't going to hoard wealth. Happy people aren't going to let people starve or go bankrupt for surgery, necessary surgery. That's what I think, like long term and big picture. So, yeah, I mean, I just try to crank out the books with everything that I know so that not everybody has to go 200 grand in debt to learn these things.
Totally.
Buy a book for $13. Christ, it's even free on Spotify as a podcast. That's how much I believe in this needs to get out. So,
yeah, it's the duality, it's the holding it all. It's like what's available versus what we're able to hold and receive with our nervous systems, and also like the way that we're addicted to pain and chaos
yeah,
and
totally.
trauma, and being able to break those cycles and knowing that what is available to us is so much more, because I think we've been, so played, or, it's hard for us to trust. And therefore, when there are people who care deeply offering these services and these tools and techniques, people don't even really understand that, like, because they've been outsourcing their power for all these years, they have no idea that they can actually be this powerful to take the change into their own hands and to be able to catalyze that for themselves. It's like, wait, all of a sudden everything in my world's telling me that I can't do anything, but like there are aspects that I can do. Like, wait a minute. And just digesting that incongruence, or even just like trying to fathom that, of like, wait, why would I be able to like take control of that one thing? Like, is it even worth it? Am I even worth it? Would it even make that much of a difference? Like, just having that support alongside it. Like, I feel like that's amazing that you said that your book is like the prerequisite of the parent Q&A. It's like, you have to be open and willing to receive this information to then be able to deepen, and be able to come with the questions that are going to serve you, because it sounds like what your books cover is this general bigger picture that affects us all. But then obviously everyone's situation is so different. So it's like, how can we tailor it to each individual person while still maintaining that bigger vision that's
Right.
going to ultimately help all of us and have us realize that we actually are all on the same team.
Yep.
I feel like if we just realize that in itself, I think about what's possible. If we all just woke up one day and we're like, wait a second, what if we are all?
Yeah. And what if agreement is not a requirement for everyone being on the same team? Because it isn't.
Boom.
Yeah. Right. That's how we heal our country and the world. That is sort of our like mission statement, or whatever you want to call it. Global healing is achieved by teaching people the skills to like themselves. And summed up in a sound bite of happy people act right. And, dialectical behavior therapy, which my programs basically are, and I've been teaching that since forever, 04. it answers this question. It is tailored to the individual's values. These are skills to help you act right. Here you go. And the Gifted Misfits book is written for young people, but it is my 8-week program in a skinny little book. I try to be potent and concise because nobody reads anymore. And I'm me, so it's like humor helping the medicine go down.
Yes. And that is so necessary in these times. I feel like comedy was one of those things that kind of got serious in these
Yeah.
few years where
Yeah.
like laughter was a little bit like policed, not policed, but just, like, are we allowed to have fun with this?
Right.
Humor in the midst of wild times. And
And
so much excavating and so much revamping and so much in the works and under construction. And it's like you said, I feel like what an amazing time to just redirect and grow in a whole new different direction, even though it still maybe even more so brings that value that you have and like your bigger mission. You know what I mean?
yeah, I do. Thanks for letting me talk about it.
Oh my gosh. We're gonna have to do this again sometime.
Anytime.
This was really, really eye-opening for me and just so amazing to get to riff and,
Yep.
connect. And yeah, where can listeners find you if they want to learn more or if they want to dive deeper into the work?
Everything is Dr. JJ Kelly, and it's Kelly. So it's everything is drjjkelly.com. The Instagram, the YouTube. You can find all the books. It's the Holy Shit series on Amazon. So, and Spotify has. It's really easy to find. And if you ever have any doubt, just go to drjjkelly.com. The website has links to everything.
Amazing.
So,
Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I can't wait for the next one.
oh, that's great. Yeah.
Out and be amazing because you are.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Jen.
Well, take good care and we'll see you all.